He called me 3 hours before his death and said, "Check the attic. It's not me there." And when I went up, there was a body, but the face, it was like someone else's. I thought it was suicide. Until I found out that someone with his name was already flying home. I'm Blake Winslow, former cop, now a private detective. I specialize in cases others turn down, family secrets, disappearances, strange deaths. This case began with an ordinary call. Midnight, number hidden. The man spoke in a muffled voice, as if through a filter, but I immediately recognized it. It was Frank Elder, my former partner, whom I hadn't heard from since 2018, after he resigned without explanation and disappeared from town. "Blake," he said, "I'm not crazy. I did everything right. But if you find me, check the attic. The important thing, not the face." 3 hours later, he was dead. Suicide, according to the police. A house on the outskirts, a gunshot to the head, a note nearby. I arrived before the medical examiner. Knew how to bypass the tape. Entered the house, dust, silence, a flickering lamp. On the table, an empty glass, in the ashtray 5 cigarette butts, 2 broken in half. Frank's habit when he's nervous. I went upstairs, to the attic, the old staircase creaking. The body lay by the wall. His clothes, height, build, all matched. But the face didn't match. Not because it was mutilated. On the contrary, too intact. Just not his. Smooth skin, slightly different features. Not like after plastic surgery, like after copying. Under the chin, a seam. Like a mask. I didn't touch it. Just took a photo. And at that moment, my phone beeped. Message: "You've subscribed to baggage tracking, Frank Elder. LA Airport, departure at 6:45, arrival in New York, 14:20. I didn't register this track. But the name was the same. I checked, indeed, there was a passenger with that name in the airline's database. And his face, my photo, attached to the booking, looked 5 years fresher. Without the scar on his cheek that Frank had since 2016. As if they took an old version and inserted it into present reality. I started digging. Found his laptop. One file, encrypted. I cracked the password on the 4th try, mirror truth. Inside, a series of audio files. He had been recording himself for the past 6 months. Fragments of delirium, at first glance. He talks to me, but not with a voice. Through reflections. He makes my movements when I'm not moving. I took a video, it shows me entering the house, but I was at the hospital at that time. He has no breath. He doesn't blink. And he waited until I got tired. Frank was paranoid. Or so it seemed. I reviewed the footage from the house cameras. At 3:12, movement in the corridor. The camera shows someone entering. From behind, can't make it out. After 20 minutes, a second person leaves. Except only one entered. In the morning, I received a call from the same hidden number. A male voice, even, without intonation. "You found the body. But not him. Don't ask where he is. Ask how many of them there are." I drove to the airport. Frank's passport was on the boarding list. I tried to stop the boarding, too late. The plane was already in the air. After 40 minutes, another message came. He is flying to become the one who will write an article about his own disappearance. This is how the substitution begins. You're next. I returned home. On the table, a postcard. No stamp. The word, Blake, and a photo. I'm sitting at this same table. But in the photo, rain is visible from the window. Now, it's clear. I checked the angle, the same. Only the sweater is different. And behind my back, in the reflection on the glass, someone is standing. I looked up. Nobody outside the window. But in the reflection, someone remained. For a second. Then disappeared. Question: what if those who disappear don't leave, but just start a replacement? Slowly. Through movement, voice, and gaze. The winter air cut like a blade as I stepped onto my porch. 3 missed calls, all from an unknown number. It wasn't unusual in my line of work, people seeking help rarely wanted their names in my call history. But something about the timing, midnight exactly, felt deliberate. Calculated. I'm Blake Winslow. 15 years with the NYPD before I handed in my badge after the Kaufman case went sideways. Now I run a small detective agency from a converted brownstone in Queens. I take the cases that make the boys in blue roll their eyes, the missing teenagers they write off as runaways, the strange noises neighbors report hearing through walls, the deaths that look too neat to be natural. My phone buzzed again as I unlocked my door. Unknown number. I answered, pressing it to my ear while shrugging off my coat. Winslow Investigations. Static crackled. Then a voice, filtered, distorted, but unmistakable. Frank Elder. My old partner. The man who'd vanished without a trace 3 years ago after we'd worked together for a decade. Blake. His voice sounded wrong. Tight. Controlled. Listen carefully. I don't have much time. I reached for my recorder. Old habits. Frank. Where the hell have you been? Not important. The line hissed, his words cutting in and out. I need you to remember everything I say. Word for word. I grabbed a pen. I'm listening. I'm not crazy. His voice dropped to a whisper. Everything I did, had to be done. But when you find me, a pause. Check the attic. Not the face. Remember that. The face isn't the proof. Frank, what are you talking about? Where are you? Let me help. Too late for that. Another pause. They're already here. Who's there? Frank. They think they got it right, but there are mistakes. Little tells. Like my cigarettes. Remember how I break them? When you're anxious. You snap them in half. Yes. Good. His breath quickened. I left you breadcrumbs. Passwords the same as always. Frank. Just promised myself if this happened, I'd call you. You're the only one who might figure it out. A hollow laugh. Should have called sooner, but I thought I was just losing my mind. Where are you? I'm coming. Too late. Already here. Just, listen. They can mimic, but they can't create. Everything they are is stolen. Nothing original. Remember that. The line went dead. I tried calling back. Nothing. I called contacts at the precinct, but Frank Elder had fallen off the grid 3 years ago. His old address was occupied by a family of 4. His parents hadn't heard from him in years. His ex-wife had remarried. It was as if he'd evaporated. Until 3 hours later when my police scanner crackled to life. Possible suicide. Male, mid-40s. Address in the Catskills. The name made my blood freeze, Frank Elder. I reached the scene before dawn. A small cabin nestled among pine trees, the kind of place people bought to escape. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the wind. 2 patrol cars and a coroner's van sat in the gravel driveway. I knew most of the officers there, benefits of 15 years on the force. Rodriguez nodded as I approached. Blake. Heard you'd show up. How's that? Dispatch got an anonymous tip you might come nosing around. He gave me a long look. Said to give you space. I kept my face neutral. Who called it in? Neighbor. Heard a gunshot around 3 a.m. You knew him, right? Elder? We were partners. I studied the cabin. Mind if I take a look? Rodriguez glanced at his watch. ME's running late. 10 minutes, that's it. Don't touch anything. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and cigarettes. A single table lamp cast yellow light across the living room. Empty whiskey glass on the coffee table. Ashtray overflowing. I counted 5 butts. 2 broken cleanly in half. Frank's signature move when stress was getting to him. The scene projected the perfect image of a man at the end of his rope. Too perfect. Like a stage set designed by someone who knew the character but hadn't lived with him. The wooden stairs to the second floor creaked under my weight. At the top was a narrow hallway and a pull-down ladder leading to an attic. I climbed up, the words from Frank's call echoing, "Check the attic." Not the face. The attic was cold, illuminated only by moonlight filtering through a small window. The body lay against the far wall. Male. Frank's height and build. Wearing clothes I recognized, a navy sweater I'd seen him wear 100 times during stakeouts. The gun, his service Glock, lay beside the right hand. But the face. I approached slowly, pulse hammering. A gunshot to the temple should have caused catastrophic damage. But the face was intact. Pristine. And wrong. It looked like Frank, but off. The features too smooth. The lines around his eyes missing. The scar on his right cheek, from a knife fight during a drug bust in 2016, completely absent. Under the chin, almost invisible unless you were looking for it, a fine seam. I didn't touch anything. Instead, I snapped photos with my phone, documenting every angle. As I zoomed in on the seam, my phone vibrated with a notification. Baggage tracking update, Frank Elder. LAX JFK. Flight UA 2801. Departure, 6:45. Arrival, 14:20. I stared at the screen. I hadn't signed up for any tracking. A creak from the stairs. Rodriguez's voice, Winslow. Time's up. I slipped my phone away and descended, mind racing. Outside, I checked the flight information. United Airlines Flight 2801 was indeed scheduled from Los Angeles to JFK, currently in the air. And the passenger manifest included one Frank Elder. The passenger photo showed Frank, but a Frank from years ago. Before the scar. Before the gray at his temples. A perfect copy of a man who no longer existed. I drove to Frank's cabin the next day after the police had cleared out. The neighbors didn't ask questions when I flashed my old badge, a trick that still worked in rural areas. Inside, the place felt hollow, like a shell scooped empty. I searched methodically, room by room. In the bedroom, behind a loose floorboard under the bed, I found a laptop. The password prompt mocked me. What had Frank said? Passwords the same as always. During our partnership, we'd used Shadow 54 for shared accounts, a reference to our unit and the year Frank's father was born. Access denied. I tried variations. Nothing. Then I remembered his words from the call, they can mimic, but they can't create. Everything they are is stolen. Nothing original. Mirrors. Reflections. Copies. I typed mirror truth. The screen unlocked. A single folder labeled evidence contained dozens of audio files, dated over the past 6 months. I pressed play on the earliest one. Frank's voice filled the cabin, steady at first. March 3rd. I'm not sure what I saw today. Probably nothing. But I'm starting this log just in case. A pause. I caught movement in my bathroom mirror. Not mine. Someone else. Just for a second. When I turned, nothing was there. I skipped ahead to a file from 2 months later. May 15th. It's getting worse. He talks to me now, but not with his voice. Through reflections. He makes my movements when I'm not moving. Sometimes he watches me from windows, from puddles. I sound crazy. Maybe I am. Another file, from July. I set up cameras. Caught something. At 2:17 a.m., the security footage shows me walking into the house. But I was at the emergency room with food poisoning. I have hospital records to prove it. It wasn't me. But it was. The most recent file, dated 3 days ago. He's getting closer. He doesn't breathe. Doesn't blink. And he's patient. So patient. He waited until I was exhausted. Now he's in the house. I hear him moving. Not at night anymore, in daylight too. I've barricaded myself in the bedroom. Have my gun. But how do you shoot something that looks exactly like you? A long silence. Then, softer. If you're listening to this, Blake, I left clues. Check the security footage. Check the photographs on the wall. Dates don't lie. And remember, they can fool the eye, but not the camera. At least, not completely. I connected to Frank's home security system using the same password. 6 cameras covered the property: front door, back door, driveway, living room, kitchen, and upstairs hallway. I scrolled to the night Frank died, 3:12 a.m. Movement in the upstairs hallway. A figure climbing the stairs to the attic. The angle showed only the back, but the navy sweater matched what I'd seen on the body. 20 minutes later, at 3:32 a.m., someone else descended those same stairs. Similar build. Different sweater, gray, not navy. Only one person had gone up. 2 had come down. I checked the front door camera. At 3:36 a.m., a figure exited the house. Face turned away from the camera. Got into a silver sedan and drove off. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Winslow. A male voice, flat and emotionless. You found the body. But not him. I tightened my grip on the phone. Who is this? Don't ask where he is. Ask how many of them there are. What do you want? Look in the places between. Where light reflects but doesn't penetrate. They've been replacing us for years. One by one. The line went dead. I tried calling back. The number was disconnected. Frank's flight would be landing at JFK in 2 hours. I had to be there. JFK Terminal 4 bustled with afternoon arrivals. I positioned myself where I could watch passengers emerging from customs. United 2801 from Los Angeles had landed 20 minutes ago. I scanned every face, pulse quickening as passengers from Frank's flight began to emerge. Then I saw him. Frank Elder, or someone wearing his face. He moved with Frank's slight limp from an old knee injury, carried his bag over his left shoulder like Frank always did. But his eyes, they swept the terminal with mechanical precision. I approached from behind, staying in his blind spot. Close enough to hear him speaking to a woman beside him. Just a short visit. Writing an article about identity theft, actually. The irony, right? His laugh was perfect. The woman smiled back. I stepped forward, ready to confront him, when my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. He's flying to become the one who will write an article about his own disappearance. This is how the substitution begins. You're next. I froze, watching as not Frank walked toward the taxi stand. Following would mean revealing myself. And if the text was right. I let him go, tracking the taxi through a rideshare app one had connections with. The address, the New Yorker offices in Midtown. My apartment felt different when I returned that evening. Nothing visibly changed, but a stillness hung in the air, as if someone had measured the exact placement of everything and recreated it down to the millimeter. On my desk sat a postcard I hadn't seen before. No stamp. Just my name, Blake, in precise handwriting that wasn't quite Frank's. And a photograph. Me, sitting at this very desk. But in the photo, rain streaked the window behind me. Tonight, stars dotted a clear sky. I was wearing a gray sweater in the photo. I glanced down at my current blue one. And behind me in the photo's reflection, a figure standing. Blurred. Watching. I spun around. Empty apartment. Turned back to the photo. The figure remained in the reflection, but now it seemed closer to me. I dropped the photo, heart pounding. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement in my window. A face, just for an instant. My face, but not quite. The eyes all wrong. Empty. Then nothing. Just the night sky and my own reflection, looking back. I picked up the phone to call, who? The police? And tell them what? That my dead ex-partner had called me before his suicide, but also was landing at JFK, and someone who looked like me but wasn't me was watching me through reflections. Instead, I took out my old case notebook and began writing everything down, connecting threads, marking inconsistencies. Like any investigation. The evidence formed a pattern too bizarre to accept but too consistent to dismiss. Frank pursued by something that looked like him. Frank dead, but also alive. Security footage showing impossibilities. A face that wasn't quite right. I glanced at the window again and froze. My reflection wasn't moving with me. It stood perfectly still, watching, as I trembled. Then its lips curved into a smile I'd never worn. A simple question formed in my mind, one that would haunt my investigation in the days to come: what if those who disappear don't leave, but start a replacement? Slowly. Through movement, voice, and gaze. The reflection blinked. I hadn't. And then it was gone, leaving me alone with my reflection once more. But the certainty grew within me: I wasn't alone in this room. And somewhere in this city, something wearing Frank's face was writing about a man who had disappeared. A man who had seen his replacement coming. A man who had left breadcrumbs for me to follow. I turned back to my notes, heart pounding. Whatever was happening had started with Frank, but it wouldn't end with him. And if I was next, I needed answers while I was still me enough to find them.